Ryan, good to see you. Good morning.
Hi, Chad. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Thanks for joining me and letting me do this video with you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we are server guys. We're server nerds. We love servers, and we manage infrastructure, server infrastructure for customers who no longer want to buy that hardware and have a data center to put it in. I mean, what a crazy time. I never thought I'd ever have handlebar mustaches, but thank you, COVID, to get the excuse to grow it. But all joking aside, yeah, the whole world was shoved out of the office, right? It's like, okay, go work from home, and IT managers are band-aiding, VPNs and trying to get something to work. And one of BrightVault's core deliverables is virtual desktop solutions, where the entire customer server stack and all their desktops are running in the BrightVault environment. And so that employee can work from home, they can work from Starbucks, they can work from anywhere, and they have access to all their corporate line of business applications. It doesn't matter what department they're in, they have access to what they need, and it can be on any device, and it's handled securely. And so, yeah, it's a huge value proposition for an organization that has realized, hey, maybe we don't need to pay rent anymore. Maybe we can get rid of that huge cost line item. And so, even taking that rent and subsidizing a migration to the cloud, so that, man, you don't have to pay for that space anymore. And I mean, there's so many ways that the lid is kind of lifted off, if you will, for an organization that migrates into a fully cloud-based computing platform. Because now, so for example, one of our customers is when they came onto BrightVault's cloud platform probably 6 years ago now. They're an accounting firm, two locations, pretty small, maybe 20 employees. And once they transitioned, they realized, man, we can hire people anywhere, not only anywhere in the U.S., anywhere in the globe. So they've since launched an office in the Philippines, and they've got people in Tokyo, Hawaii, up and down the West Coast, and to where they now have a global talent pool that they can pull from versus just whatever was going on for them in Southern California. And so there's a huge, opportunity for businesses once they realize that they can get out of this physical space that they're tied to, that now their talent acquisition just kind of opens up, and onboarding, offboarding employees becomes much easier. I mean, there's just so many trails we could go down talking about the benefits of migrating to a solution like that. AWS and Azure, they're amazing. I mean, that type of cloud company is called a hyperscaler, and the reason why they have that nomenclature is because they are an amazing fit for, think of Uber, okay? Startup, they're starting to code software, and they know they're going through rounds of funding. Like, oh, hey, we just landed $10 million. Okay, $5 million is going into infrastructure. They need to be with a cloud service provider that doesn't have to go into the vendor channel and acquire all that hardware to then scale to that, with that funding round, right? And so AWS and Azure are amazing for that. They're built for that. They're able to hyper scale. And so, and then Uber hits their IPO, and like now they're everywhere globally. Like, it's like, how many servers you need to run that infrastructure? It's insane. And so AWS and Azure have that infrastructure already purchased and deployed. And so, if an Uber were to come knocking on BrightVault's door, it'd be like, 5 minutes in the conversation, BrightVault's not right for you. And I had that conversation probably 3 weeks ago with a startup looking to kind of scale at that magnitude. Right. And then I just told the founders, like, I can deliver value, but I think you guys would be better served working with, AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud, because those guys are built for what you want to do and where you want to go.
Sure.
Yeah, and so they're amazing at that, and we need those guys around to deliver services in that model. But what about all the small and medium-sized businesses of the world that don't want to take on funding, that don't want to scale, especially at that level. They want to grow. Well, growing and scaling are radically different things. And so,
Right.
Where Brightvault really differentiates, one we've already talked on, is that replication architecture kind of built into our core product. Is every production VM is got a copy ready to boot, totally segregated on totally separate storage, ready to go. That's a huge value add. And then, the other layered services that we have, like being able to then send that data to another data center and have that ready in a disaster scenario. And let's say a plane misses the runway and lands on the data center instead of the runway. Scenario. There's a billion of them out there. Data center goes down. Well, if that were an AWS or Azure data center, you're kind of out of luck if you didn't build in disaster recovery into your architecture. And so, so Brightvault does that, and then an additional value is then we have the expertise on our bench, on our technical bench, to monitor, remediate, and make sure that is functioning. It's not a set it and forget it. It's not something that you click a box in AWS and it just does it for you. No, it's like you got to have that technical expertise there to respond to alerts that it broke and find out why it broke and fix it and get it back up and running. So Brightvault has that tech expertise on our bench, and we're doing that for our customers. And so not only is it a great relief to the end user, it's a great relief to the MSPs that we partner with, because then the MSP doesn't have to have that headache on their shoulders. So when an MSP places a client with AWS and Azure, it's like, well, then they have to have that technical prowess. So a value add that we offer to partners like PulseOne is like, hey, we can take that burden off of you, and there's no, cost increase for the customer. It's like a pass through for them. So that's another big differentiator for us.
And that's the significant difference to where you don't have to have the subject matter experts. You do when you're in Azure or AWS. You need a MSP or you need an in-house IT that are experts in that and setting all that up and all the security and so huge relief and value in that with Brightvault.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, security's, it's huge, and it's getting huger. It's just more and more of an issue. And that's one area that Brightvault's core architecture really helps our customers. One of the gravest security threats in the landscape today, as is malware. And, brief primer on malware for everybody who's not geeky like us is, you get an email, it looks interesting, you click on it, and unbeknownst to you, now your computer just has some software that's sleeping in the background. You don't even know that your machine's infected. But what that software is doing is now going out into the corporate network, installing itself on every other machine, every server, and giving a gateway for these bad actors to then research your company and what do you do for business, kind of get some idea of your revenue. And then we've seen peers in our space where that got infected with malware, where it was like a 3 to 4 week research period from the time they first became infected to when those guys pulled the trigger, encrypted all the data on the network, all the servers, took everything down, and then you get a friendly phone call like, hey, if you pay us $100,000, we'll give you, they hold you hostage, right? So it's an ugly scenario. And so one of the core value sets that Brightvault brings to the table that other cloud providers don't offer is we are, every 5 minutes, we are replicating all production data VMs to completely separate, segregated, standby compute hardware. It's still all flash. It's still, got good performance to it. And one of the core value adds is that if a customer environment were to go through that, and knock on wood, thankfully that hasn't happened yet, but it could, because it's the human element. An employee, all it takes an employee clicking on that email, and and their VMs are now encrypted. And so what happens is in the Brightvault architecture, we've got those VMs replicated to this kind of fenced off separate area, right, so that should production go down, we just flip the switch, turn those guys on, bring them online, and the customer can be up and running. And so, because the alternative is, now we got to restore from backup. And, restoring from backup is, especially with today's data set sizes, they're terabytes in size, that takes forever to come from backup.
So long. Forever.
Days and days and days. One of a cloud service provider in our space, actually their infrastructure got infected, and they had clients that were down, measured in several weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. And they have since been, that brand has basically gone out of business. It's very sad. But it's also no surprise. I mean, you got to be built ready for that. It's coming. And so that's a huge value proposition that Brightvault brings to the table. It's like, hey, we know that's coming, and so we've built it ready. We've built the architecture ready for it. So, if a customer deploys, in any other service provider, you're not getting that replication. You're not getting that, that standby environment that's ready to go. And so, yeah, that's a huge piece of the security puzzle that we like to tell customers, hey, we're thinking about this, we're ready for it, and it's built in a way that we're ready to go in the event that were to happen.
It's awesome. Better instead of having a mindset of more security. Yes, you have that mindset too, but the mindset of it's gonna happen. So are we ready? So perfect. So perfect.
I mean, at the end of the day, if the NSA is getting hacked, and they are, like, what chance does everybody else have, right? I mean, it's like
totally
the richest government in the world has got all the resources they need, and they're still getting infiltrated. And often it's that human element, it's like we're the ones that screw it all up. But so you gotta have that mindset that it's going to happen. Be ready for it. Yeah. So GPU stands for Graphical Processing Unit. It's basically, everybody kind of heard the word CPU, Central Processing Unit. So the CPU kind of manages all your day-to-day tasks, running your operating system, calculating your Excel spreadsheet, everything the computer does. But when you bring in intense graphics to the equation, the CPU, it gets overloaded, and plus its architecture isn't built to render graphics well.
Right.
So a GPU, a graphics processing unit, is a piece of hardware that installs in a cloud architecture into our cloud servers, and it basically offloads the rendering task from the CPU to the GPU and accelerates that so that the end user has a local workstation-like experience. So their computer that they're on at home, it can be an iPad, it can be their MacBook, it can be whatever. Because the horsepower of that remote machine doesn't matter, because now the horsepower is offloaded to the data center. Everything is being rendered in the data center, and just video and keyboard and mouse strokes, are being what's sent and received. So it's a radically different approach to solving this problem, but it's couldn't be more timely with these firms being forced to figure out how to work remotely. And so, yeah, it's exciting. It's there's still it's still cutting edge, and so but there's no longer, we're beyond early adopter, which is great. So what is early adopter is you're getting in knowing you're going to have a lot of headaches, and so we're kind of past that phase where you're still kind of early. It's it's becoming more mainstream, and that means most of the bugs have been worked out. It's we're still careful not to offer guarantees, but it's like, man, it's the best thing you're going to get now that your office is closed and you can't go there. It's gonna solve that problem, and and more dollars from the industry are pouring into this space, and more players are getting involved, and so it's just it's a sunny horizon moving forward. It's exciting to be in the space and be able to offer the solution to customers that really need it.
And it also solves the problem of data being spread out all over the place, right? So you've got these graphic architect departments where, okay, their data is in the cloud, So I'm going to go home and work on it, and then I'm going to download it from the cloud to my home computer or my work home computer, do everything I needed to do, and then I have to upload it. Well, the upload didn't happen. Maybe the backup didn't happen. And now I've got, IP or sensitive data, client data on that home computer. Tons of problems, right?
Yeah, great point. And thank you for bringing that up. That's a huge problem that moving it into BrightVault solves, because now that data is centralized. It's surrounded with security. It's being backed up. It's being replicated. And so, and you don't have that human element where, this is a problem that as IT technologists, we were wrestling with in the early 2000s when kind of computing went decentralized. You got people traveling, working remotely, and this was a huge headache. It's like, oh yeah, I did work on that proposal and my local laptop, and I forgot to get on the VPN and put it back on the corporate file server, and my laptop died, and you're out of luck, or something more serious like intellectual property, like you mentioned. So, that's a big problem. That's a huge problem, and again, that human element just creates too many variables. So having all that compute and data stored and staying in the data center and not being downloaded and worked on remotely, that eliminates that human element entirely. So the user logs in and renders it from the cloud. It stays in the cloud. It's being constantly replicated, being backed up, and so that problem goes away. Yeah, it's been a joy to get to know you, Chad, and your team. I shared I think on our last call, I've been impressed with Pulse One, and we kind of get the Oz behind the curtain view of various MSP players that are servicing mutual clients, right? Mm-hmm. I've definitely been impressed with Pulse One, because our team has that behind the curtain view of which MSPs are taking care of their customer servers and which ones aren't, and Pulse One definitely is. And so I think that's high praise, because the majority of MSPs, it's sad to say, do not. Thanks for inviting me to be on this. It's a joy, and I look forward to working with you guys more.
Thank you again, Ryan. I really appreciate it.